Hello, Ghost of Lilacs here with the Stardew Valley playthrough. I'm going to be completing the classic community center, no remixed bundles. This playthrough was completed after the 1.6 update. I'll be playing on PC with limited mods, which will be linked in the description box below. This is not a seated playthrough or a speed run. I'll be taking my time because I want to enjoy myself. Let's get started. This is Ghost, who lives on Potpourri Farm. Their favorite thing is spring onions. I awoke on day 1 with a package from Mayor Lewis with 15 parsnip seeds. Before I could plant them, I needed to clear up my farm a bit and gather enough wood for my first chest. It didn't take long, and before you could say salmonberry season, I was off to town. I greeted my new neighbors along the way and took note of the shady shopkeeper Pierre. I had left my job at Joja, so I wasn't going to shop there. I picked up a variety of seeds, cauliflower, parsnip, a green bean, and some potatoes. I returned to my farm to plant my seeds and greeted more of my neighbors. I didn't meet everyone, but I put a good dent in the task. I was excited to see all the forest forageables, especially the spring onions. I returned to my farm late, where I planted some mixed seeds and cleared some of the stone before heading to bed. I reached level 1 foraging. I had a letter from Willie on day 2. He wanted me to meet him down at the beach. Once I had watered my crops and gathered enough wood for a chest, I did just that. The fisherman gave me his old fishing rod. I stopped by the Cindersap Forest for spring onions before heading to the mountain lake. I utilized fish spawning spots throughout the day into the evening. The sun had set when I ventured into the Stardrop Saloon and met Clint. The blacksmith was the last resident I needed to meet. I spent the rest of the night fishing in town before heading home. I flew past level 1 fishing onto level 2. I awoke to a soggy, rainy mess on day 3. I planted some mixed seeds and headed to the Cindersap Forest for spring onions. I would need the energy as it was a fishing day. I wasn't going to attempt to catch a catfish today, but that wasn't going to stop me from catching the shad and the eel. I started in the mountains and utilized fish spawning spots. I took a break that afternoon for Clint to open some geodes and make some donations to the museum. I fished in town that evening and caught the shad, and later I nabbed the eel. I breezed past level 3 fishing, on to level 4. The skies had cleared on day 4, and I got to work watering my crops. It seemed that a crow had feasted on one of my potatoes. I wonder what happened to all the scarecrows Grandpa had when he was running the farm. I considered this while I put together a sad little tree farm. I would need trees with tappers in the future, and although it would take some time for these to grow, it would be nice to have a small little area dedicated to them. I went foraging for spring onions and cleaned up the debris around the forest. Once I had a clear path around the woods, I returned home and cleaned up more of my farm. It's going to drive me bonkers to have to wade through the weeds and trip over rocks and branches, so I'd rather get a start on it now. I reached foraging level 2 and mining level 1. I was so exhausted, I forgot to ship anything before bed. Whoops. Marnie was waiting on my farmhouse porch on day 5 with the sweetest little cat. She had found them hanging around outside of my farm and asked if I wanted to take them in. Of course I said yes. And that's how little Marmalade came to live on my farm. I had a letter informing me that the mines were open, but that would have to wait. My first parsnips were ready to harvest. I stopped in the Cindersap Forest and utilized a fish spawning spot before gathering spring onions. In town, I purchased potato seeds and a backpack upgrade. I planted my seeds and headed back into town when I was stopped by Mayor Lewis. He showed me the community center and how he had allowed it to fall into disrepair. I was more interested in the little green marshmallow running around. After he left, I took a closer look at the shiny thing on the floor. I couldn't make out what it said. How peculiar. I headed to the mines where I met Marlin of the Adventurers Guild. He gave me a rusty sword, and I got to work. It was a good luck day, and that was reflected by the amount of copper ore I acquired. That evening, I found the wood club, which was slightly better than the rusty sword. I made it to level 10 and acquired the iron dirk. It's kinda crummy, so I won't be using it. I returned home with my pockets full of rocks, minerals, and ore. I reached farming level 1. Clint was on my porch on day 6 with blueprints for how to craft a smelting furnace. I had a letter from the wizard who lived in the woods. He seemed to know something about the green marshmallow from the community center, so I figured I should go see him. But first, I crafted my first scarecrow and a furnace. I traveled to meet the wizard, and he explained the green marshmallow was actually a Junimo. He gave me some funny forest juice, and I gained the power of forest magic. Ooh. Now I could figure out what the Junimos wanted. I gathered some spring onions and headed to the community center. I had brought along some things to donate, like spring forageables, some wood, stone, and a parsnip. I headed to the mountain lake to fish up a largemouth bass for Willie and grabbed the rest of the fish from my chest. I donated all the fish I had and delivered an eel to Caroline. I brought the largemouth bass to Willie and headed to the beach. I fished up a sardine, the last fish I would be able to obtain this season, with the exception of the catfish that I would probably tackle in summer. I returned to my farm and chopped trees. A festive green party hat fell out of one of the branches, and I decided to channel my inner green Junimo and wear it. I donated the wood I collected to the construction bundle and headed home. That night, a fairy visited my farm and accelerated the growth of some of my crops. Thanks, little buddy! Thanks to my fairy friend, I had potatoes and cauliflower ready to harvest on day 7. It was a busy morning around the farm. I planted the mixed spring seeds I earned from donating the spring forage to the community center, and that took up a big chunk of my energy. I headed to the cindersap forest, and to my astonishment, there were no spring onions. I brought Mayor Lewis a frozen tear for his birthday and bought some potato seeds from Pierre's. Why potatoes? I just think they're neat! I dropped off the cauliflower and potatoes to the community center, planted my spuds, and was off to the mines. It wasn't a good luck day, but I didn't have a bad time. I picked up a sweet Letterman's jacket that I think looks great with my festive party hat. I made it to floor 20 and obtained a glow ring, the best equipment I could have for floors 31 through 39. I reached level 3 foraging, level 1 combat, and level 2 mining. I planted some carrot seeds on day 8. I also crafted a second furnace. Once my watering was finished, I headed to the cindersap forest for spring onions, and spent the majority of the day fishing, first in town, and later at the beach. That evening, I entered the Adventurers Guild, where I sold some old gear. I did not sell my fish, as I had a feeling I had leveled up my skill, and I had. I reached level 5 fishing and chose the fisher profession. Fish are worth 25% more. I checked my mail on the morning of day 9, and my dad had sent me 500 gold. What a great way to start the day. I sold the fish I caught the day before and harvested a few parsnips and a potato. I watered my crops and checked for spring onions. I asked Clint to smash some geodes for me and donated a bunch of goodies to Gunther. I accepted the cauliflower seeds reward and planted them where the parsnips and potatoes were. It was a pretty good luck day, so I decided to go mining. I was feeling pretty good. A Dougie dropped a diamond, and imagine my glee and absolute delight when I noticed I had acquired an ancient seed. I would be sure to donate it to the museum immediately to obtain one for my garden. Later that evening, I acquired a forest sword which made quick work of the beasties. I made it to level 30 before returning home. I reached farming level 2 and combat level 2. I was very busy on day 10. It started with the harvesting of rice and a parsnip. I took a wasted trip into the cindersap forest as there were no spring onions. In town, I caught the sunfish for Willie, and when I delivered it, the fisherman gave me a prize token. Clint opened some geodes for me, and I donated more goodies to the museum, including the ancient seed. I was awarded my own version of a plantable seed for my farm. I asked Clint for an axe upgrade and traded in my prize token for 12 carrot seeds. Back at my farm, I planted my ancient seed and carrots and headed to the community center where I donated a red mushroom for the exotic foraging bundle. I brought Vincent a daffodil for his birthday and headed to the mountains. There, I picked up the insect head weapon from the Adventurers Guild I earned by bug slaying. I sold my wood club and forest sword before heading into the mines. It was a good luck day, and I had just enough time to make it down 5 floors before returning home, my pockets full of ore and gems. I reached level 3 mining. I had a letter from Robin on day 11. She had lost her axe and was offering a reward to whoever returned it. I had potatoes, kale, and carrots ready to harvest. I was going to save the carrots for my trips to the mines. In town, I picked up a few parsnip seeds, then checked for spring onions, and found the missing axe. I headed to the mountains and returned the axe before heading into the mines. It was not a good luck day, but I made really good time traversing the cavern. I was finding a bunch of iron ore, and I made it all the way to level 50. I obtained the combat boots, which give me +3 defense. I raced home to craft a third furnace and set up some iron ore to smelt while I slept. I crafted my first crummy little sprinklers on day 12. I really dislike making these because it feels like a total waste of resources. It would still be a while until I reached level 6 farming and could craft quality sprinklers, so I bit the bullet and just made a few. I gathered some spring onions on my way to Clint's to pick up my copper axe. I tried it out around the farm and gathered enough hardwood to donate to the community center, completing the construction bundle. But I wasn't finished. I had brought along bars, minerals, and monster loot to contribute to the minecart upgrade. I just needed a gold bar, fire quartz, and solar essence. I was low on energy from all my stump busting, so I checked to see if Gus was selling spicy eel or anything particularly useful for a deep dive in the mines. And would you look at that? He was selling the Maki roll I would need for Gus's friendship bundle. I didn't see it as a waste of money. I saw it as saving time for future Ghost. I was so distracted, I didn't purchase any food for myself. In the mines, it was Ghost Appreciation Day. Not me, Ghost, the scary ones that attack. I obtained a solar essence right away that would bring me even closer to unlocking the minecarts. Unfortunately, none of them dropped gold ore. I made it down 5 floors, and before heading home, I sold my rubber boots to the Adventurers Guild. I reached foraging level 4, mining level 4, and combat level 3. The Egg Festival had arrived on day 13. Before heading off for fun, I had cauliflower, potatoes, carrots, rice, and most importantly, my first green bean to harvest. I hoed and watered the area for my future strawberries and headed into town. I chatted with my neighbors and spent all of my money on strawberry seeds. I participated in the egg hunt and won the exclusive straw hat. I returned to my farm, and after putting down fertilizer, I planted my new seeds. I had just enough time to stop by the community center where I dropped off the solar essence, which opened up the friendship section. I had anticipated this and donated the Maki roll and a frozen geode. I donated the green bean, finishing the spring crops, and opened the last section, all money-related donations. I reached level 3 farming. I had a bunch of spring forage ready to harvest on day 14. Rather than spend what little money I had on a ton of seeds, I crafted more forage seeds and planted them. I crafted 3 tappers, one for each type of tree, and headed into town. I did purchase a few potato seeds from Pierre and wished Haley a happy birthday with a daffodil. In the Cindersap forest, there was just 1 spring onion. I planted my taters and headed to the mines. It was a good luck day, and I made it down 10 floors. I encountered several ghosts that dropped enough gold ore to smelt the gold bar I'd need for the community center. I also found some aquamarine so I could donate one for Emily's bulletin board request. I made it to floor 60 and obtained the burglar's shank. It's not great, so I sold it before heading home. When I tuned into the news on day 15, I learned it was salmonberry season. Not unlike spring onions, salmonberries aren't necessarily the best ways to replenish stamina, but they are free and boost my foraging skill. I harvested some cauliflower and parsnips, then cut down a few trees. Robin had requested 20 pieces of fresh lumber, and these 2 were blocking the view of my crops. At Pierre's, I ran into Krabby Gale, who was sulking about the egg hunt. Don't be bitter, just get better. While I was there, I picked up a few parsnip seeds. I donated the aquamarine and gold bar to the community center and headed to Robin's. I fulfilled her quest and ordered a silo I'd need for my future farm friends. In the cindersap forest, I gathered spring onions, salmon berries, and fished at a spawning spot where I fished up a chub I would donate to the community center another day. That evening, I spent some time in the mines where a ghost dropped a ghost fish I could add to my specialty fishing bundle. I only made it 5 floors before returning home. I awoke to a chilly, drizzly morning on day 16. I had a few crops to harvest, but I didn't have to water. I headed to the cindersap forest for salmonberry and spring onion gathering before heading into town. I bit the bullet and caught the catfish. I really dislike fishing, but one of the worst was over. I headed to Clint's and the blacksmith opened some geodes for me and I donated goodies to the museum. At Pierre's, I picked up more potato seeds and was off to the community center. I donated the chub, catfish, and ghost fish. I returned home to plant my potatoes and traveled to the mines. It was a good luck day, and I acquired a fair bit of iron ore. I made it to level 80 and obtained the Firewalker boots. They added the same amount of defense as my combat boots, but with +3 immunity. I sold the combat boots to the Adventurers Guild and headed home. I reached level 4 combat and level 5 mining. I chose the miner profession, +1 ore per vein. I awoke to a letter from my dad on day 17. He had found 500 gold Grandpa had left for me. I had some cauliflower ready to harvest, and I crafted a recycling machine. I collected salmon berries and encountered the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and with it, the leprechaun hat. I scooped up spring onions and headed to Clint's. There was rain in the forecast for the following day, and as much as I wanted a pickaxe upgrade, I went for the watering can. I stopped by the beach for some foraging when I found a mussel that I donated to the community center's crab pot bundle. I utilized a fish spawning spot at the mountain lake and hoed up the book Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Thick, and upon reading it, I gained +1 defense. I went to the mines hoping to find a fire quartz. I did not, but I did find a red mushroom I could donate to Emily's dye bundle at the community center. I only made it down 5 floors, but I wasn't mad. I reached level 4 farming. I didn't have a thing to do around the farm on day 18. With the rain clouds acting as my watering can, I headed to the cindersap forest for spring onion and salmonberry collecting. I brought Pam a salmonberry for her birthday and donated the red mushroom to the dye bundle at the community center. It wasn't a good luck day, but I was determined to find a fire quartz. The mines really weren't that bad. I acquired the tempered broadsword at level 90. It was more powerful than the insect head, but it was slow. I encountered an infested floor that was a bit of a time sink. A little later, I found a fire quartz. I didn't stop to gather anything else. I grabbed it and ran. I ran all the way to the community center, where I completed the last bundle for the boiler room. Not too shabby. The Junimos fixed the mine carts overnight. I reached foraging level 5 and chose the forester profession. Trees dropped 25% more wood. I had a letter from Jody requesting a cauliflower on day 19. I had parsnips, a green bean, carrots, and cauliflowers ready to harvest. I also had my first pine tar ready. Now that my sad little tree farm was filling in, I moved the tapper over. My upgraded watering can was ready to pick up, but Clint didn't open until 9. I gathered spring onions to pass the time. I dropped off the cauliflower to Jody and purchased some parsnip seeds from Pierre. At Clint's, I picked up my watering can and he crushed some geodes for me. I donated the new minerals to the museum. I fished in town for quite some time. Robin had requested a sunfish, and as the forecast called for rain the following day, this would be my only chance to catch one. I finally caught it and delivered it. I dropped off the pine tar to the community center as part of the exotic forage category. I watered my crops with my new and improved watering can. It was still a slog, but it was better than watering one crop at a time. Once finished, I headed to the mines as I was out of copper ore. I found the Monster Compendium, and upon reading it, monsters have a small chance to drop double loot. I left with enough copper ore for a few bars and took the newly repaired mine carts home. I reached level 5 combat and chose the fighter profession. All attacks deal 10% more damage. I awoke to the pitter-patter of rain and a letter from Robin. She had sent me 50 pieces of wood. I needed a lot of wood, and I had been so focused on mining, I hadn't really been collecting as much as I should. I remedied that and chopped a bunch of trees on my farm. I had enough copper bars to craft one preserve jar. I added a salmonberry, and in a few days I'd have jelly for the community center. I headed to Clint's and requested my pickaxe upgrade. I headed to the beach and repaired the bridge leading to the tide pools. I almost said Tide Pods. I would need an urchin for the dye bundle, and anything I could add to the crab pot would help, but there wasn't anything new. In the Cindersap forest, I gathered spring onions and chopped some trees. It was Shane's birthday, and I brought him a salmonberry. Then I was back to the forest as a chub frenzy started. Then I decided to have some fun. I have known of an exploit that I've never utilized myself until now. It's not a cheat, it's not a mod, it's not a bug, it's a feature. If you place a chair in just the right spot, you can hop over the big log into the secret woods. Normally, you wouldn't be able to enter this area until you have the steel axe to split the log. But today, my friends and fellow farmers, I decided to try it out myself. And it worked. I slayed slimes, gathered morel mushrooms I'd need for the exotic foraging bundle, busted stumps, and fished up the wood skip I'd need for the specialty fish bundle. Then there was the matter of exiting. Now you need to adjust the position of the chair, otherwise you get stuck in a loop that will keep taking you back into the woods. I felt I had enough fun for the day, so I decided to head home. Tide Pods. I woke to a beautiful sight on day 21, a farm full of crops. And weeds, branches, and rocks. But that didn't matter, because my strawberries were ready. I quickly crafted another chest for stuff I needed to donate to the community center and got harvesting. Once finished, I gathered spring onions and purchased more potato seeds. I delivered a quartz to Sam, and he gave me a prize token that I exchanged for an orange sapling. I donated the morel and oak resin to the community center, completing the exotic forage bundle. I added the urchin to the dye bundle and was almost home when I remembered to donate the wood skip to the specialty fish bundle. Back at the farm, I planted my orange sapling and spent the rest of the evening chopping trees. I reached level 5 farming and chose the tiller profession. Crops are worth 10% more. Demetrius was on my porch the rainy morning of day 22. He had made a breakthrough in his research and wanted to set up mushrooms or fruit bats in my farm cave. I went with the fruit bats. I had my first coffee beans ready to harvest. I replanted some, really just as placeholders for the end of the season. I picked up my upgraded pickaxe from Clint and ordered a coop from Robin. I utilized a fish spawning spot in the mountains before heading into the mines to test out my newly improved pickaxe. I was surprised at how nice the mines were, considering it was not a good luck day. I flew down the floors, with a couple exceptions, and in those cases, I crafted staircases. I reached floor 100 and obtained a star drop. I felt refreshed and made it down another 10 floors, where I acquired the slammer. I returned home, and even though I wanted to go straight to bed, my first jelly was ready. I popped a spring onion in the preserve jar to make some pickles. I reached level 6 fishing and level 6 mining. I received a letter from my dad on day 23. He had read an article about me in the local paper. I felt a little homesick, but glad that I was making him proud. My first maple syrup was ready, and I used it to craft a bee house. I had some parsnips, potatoes, and cauliflower ready to harvest. And would you look at that? I had 5 gold star parsnips I could donate to the Quality Crops bundle at the community center. But not today. Today, I wanted to reach the bottom of the mines and complete a lava rock crab slaying request for Demetrius. It was the last day, and although I had put a good dent in it the day before, I wasn't finished. The reward was 900 gold, just for doing what I'd be doing anyway. I'd be a fool not to follow through. It took me a few hours, but I reached level 115 and turned in the request for that sweet, sweet gold. I was back to the mines, and the last 5 floors were kind of annoying as there was tons of stone, but there was also an abundance of gold ore. I finally reached the bottom and obtained the skull key. I re entered the mines, the higher floors, as I was out of copper again. I found a nice bit before heading home. Right before bed, I crafted 2 Maya makers as I would need them in the near future. I reached level 7 mining. I smelted bars and watered my crops the morning of day 24. It was the day of the flower dance. Honestly, I didn't have any interest in attending. I had so many other things I'd rather be doing, but I wanted the rare crow scarecrow Pierre was selling. I tore myself away from my farm and purchased the scarecrow and chatted with my neighbors. See, even Willie didn't want to be there. I watched as everyone danced and had a good time. I tried my best to be cheerful, but all I could think about were the spring onions I had neglected to collect the past 2 days. After the festivities, I donated the jelly and 5 gold star parsnips to the community center and collected lots of spring onions. But hey, it paid off. I reached level 6 foraging. Day 25 was a very exciting day. I had my second batch of strawberries ready. I was going to reach level 6 farming, and that meant quality sprinklers. I had been smelting a bunch of gold bars, but I didn't have nearly enough iron to cover both the lightning rods I wanted and the quality sprinklers. There was only one thing to do. I had to go to the mines. But first, I picked up some spring onions to snack on. Then it was mine time. My strategy was simple yet effective. I brought my furnaces along and set them up outside of the mines. Then I took the elevator to floor 40, cleaned out the iron ore, and returned to the surface. About every 2 hours, the furnaces were ready, and I picked up a lot of iron ore that day, which meant a bunch of bars were smelted. That night, I sold some gear to the Adventurers Guild. My pickled spring onions were ready, and I donated them to the community center another day. That night, the fairy returned. I reached level 6 farming and can now craft quality sprinklers, and I reached level 6 combat. I was eager to get my day started the morning of day 26. I crafted a bunch of sprinklers, and I wouldn't have to water much of anything from now on. I gathered up some parsnips, potatoes, and strawberries thanks to the fairy's visit. Oh, and the ancient seed was ready. This was madness. I have never had such luck. I had added some speed grow to the ancient seed when I planted it, but I didn't need it at all because it was ready to harvest in 17 days thanks to my fairy friend. I spent a lot of time moving things around in my chests, and I crafted some mixed spring seeds to act as placeholders for spring so I wouldn't have to hoe and water those areas in the beginning of summer. I set up a stone fence around my finished coop and headed to Marnie's where I purchased 2 chicks. There weren't any spring onions to gather, so I headed to the beach where I purchased the iridium rod from Willie. I'm going to need some trap bobbers when I fish for the pufferfish, and for that I'll need the best rod available right now. I brought a daffodil to my good friend Pierre for his birthday, and I usually remember to do something on this special day, but not this year. I delivered a frozen tear to Alex, finishing a fetch quest. I checked the traveling cart lady's wares and purchased the rare seed. I spent the rest of the evening into the night clearing my farm. I woke up to watered crops on day 27. Sprinklers are awesome. My good friend Pierre sent me the recipe for a blueberry tart. And my first honey was ready. I had a bunch of potatoes and parsnips ready to harvest. I crafted more of the mixed spring seeds as placeholders. I headed to the community center and donated the honey and... Hold on, why did I think I needed pickles? Oh, I've been making an idiot out of myself. Then I donated a blackberry and wild plum to the fall forage bundle courtesy of my fruit bats. I had a few spring onions to gather before I brought Emily a topaz for her birthday. I utilized a fish spawning spot down at the beach and purchased a heater from Marnie. I spent the rest of the night cleaning up my farm. I reached farming level 7. On day 28, spring was coming to an end, and tomorrow my strawberries would be a distant memory. I didn't have time to sulk. I had work to do. Emily sent me the salad recipe, and my oak resin was ready. I checked in on Tabby and Melly, my coop critters, and crafted a few sprinklers. I made a final trek to the cindersap forest for spring onions. I donated the oak resin to the Enchanter's Bundle and a mushroom to the fall foraging collection at the community center. Clint opened some geodes for me, and I donated the new minerals to the museum. While I was there, I picked up a rare crow scarecrow. I worked on cleaning up my farm that afternoon and found the book Woody's Secret. Upon reading it, felled trees have a 5% chance to yield double wood. I started an oak tree farm in the bottom corner. I expected some strange weather in the upcoming season, and that would help my trees grow quickly. It was already warm when I awoke on day 1. I was excited to start a new season with new crops, new fish, and new forage. I had a good bit of hoeing and watering to do before anything else, so I got to work. I took a little break to say good morning to my chickens who had matured and produced their first little eggs. Oh, they grow up so fast! I scythed away the remains of my crops and cleared the debris before heading into town for seeds. I bought a variety of fruits, vegetables, and flowers, mostly blueberries. It took all afternoon, but I finally finished, and I wasn't unhappy with the layout. I went foraging and found a sweet pea in the woods and utilized a fish spawning spot in town. On my way home, I found a grape, and I donate all of the summer forage another day, once I got my paws on a spiceberry. I have to admit, I felt pretty pleased with myself on day 2. All of these crops, and none of them required watering? I was living the dream. I checked in on my feathered friends and put their little eggs into the mayo makers. I crafted a pair of trap bobbers for my fishing rod because today was all about fishing. First, I delivered a topaz to Mayor Lewis, and he gave me a prize token. I exchanged it for some mixed flower seeds. I dropped off my axe at Clint's for a steel upgrade, and then I was off to the beach. I sold Willie some forage and picked up some trout soup to make things a little easier. I caught the tuna, the tilapia, and pufferfish. I sold any fish I wouldn't need for the community center and picked up another trout soup. Then I was off to the mountain lake. I caught a sturgeon and a treasure chest that had both Neptune's glaive and the broken trident weapons inside. Now, I fished up both of these independently in the past, but both in the same chest was a little silly. I picked up a spiceberry and headed home. I gathered up the grape and sweet pea and headed to the community center. I completed the summer forage bundle and lake fish bundle. I added fishies to the ocean fish bundle and the puffer fish to the specialty fish bundle. I spent the rest of the evening cleaning up my farm. There was an earthquake during the night. I reached level 7 fishing. Mayor Lewis sent me some mail on day 3, the recipe for spaghetti, and a request to find his lucky purple shorts. Yeah, I'll get right on that. I checked on my chickens and headed to the mountains. I fished at a spawning spot, then ordered a fish pond from Robin. I had picked up a slime slaying request and headed into the mines. The infested floor was not fun, but I quickly finished the quest. I spent the rest of the day gathering iron ore on the middle floors. Then I was off to the mayor's house to turn in the slime slaying request and headed home for the night. On day 4, I received 500 gold for being this month's best neighbor for completing so many fetch quests and slaying requests. I delivered an aquamarine to Marnie, completing another fetch quest. In town, I picked up my axe from Clint and donated some goodies to the museum. I brought a sweet pea to Jas for her birthday and used my new and improved steel axe to destroy the log blocking the path to the secret woods. I gathered up a fiddlehead fern for the community center and busted stumps. I returned to my farm and spent all afternoon and most of the evening breaking apart all manner of trees, branches, stumps, and logs. Then I dipped into the mines for some late-night iron ore gathering. I was always going to need more ore. I reached level 7 foraging. I was very busy the morning of day 5. My fish pond was ready, so I added a sturgeon. Once I started processing the roe, I can make caviar. How fancy! I had wheat ready to harvest, and I filled in the space with some mixed seeds. I scooped up a peach from my farm cave and visited the traveling cart lady. She was selling a cherry, and I purchased it. I was off to the community center. The peach and cherry went towards the artisan bundle, the wheat to the fodder bundle, and the fiddlehead fern to the chef's bundle. Clint wanted iron ore, so I went mining for it. It was a bad luck day, but I finished up quickly. I turned in the request and earned a prize token that I exchanged for 3 mystery boxes. Blah. While I was there, I ordered an upgrade for my pickaxe. I returned home and spent the rest of the evening cleaning up my farm. I reached level 8 mining. I had my first batch of hot peppers ready to harvest on day 6. I checked in on my chickens and headed to the secret woods for stump busting. After that, I went to the beach to engage in my least favorite pastime, fishing. It's not that I'm bad at it, I just don't enjoy it, and it makes my wrists hurt. I returned to my farm with little energy. I added a soggy newspaper to the recycling machine. There's a 10% chance I'll wake up to a bolt of cloth tomorrow. I felt very lucky on day 7. The soggy newspaper had indeed been transformed into cloth. I had my first summer squash ready, and I was glad, because I was running low on my carrots. I crafted a cookout kit and fried up an egg for the chef bundle. I had a pomegranate ready in the fruit bat cave. The traveling cart lady was selling a bunch of goodies I'd need for the community center, but I only bought 2 red cabbage seeds. I picked up my pickaxe from Clint, and he opened a geode and my mystery boxes. They weren't too bad. Hardwood, explosives, and some other stuff. At the community center, I dropped off the cloth for the artisan bundle, the fried egg for the chef bundle, and the pomegranate to the enchanter's bundle. I returned home to craft sprinklers and planted my red cabbage and mixed flower seeds. I also crafted a few lightning rods in anticipation of the thunderstorm the following day. Then I was off to the mines to gather more iron ore and bat wings. Before bed, I broke up the boulders around my farm. I was awakened to a crash that shook the farmhouse on day 8. It was the first thunderstorm since I moved to the valley. I felt reasonably prepared with the amount of lightning rods set up that my precious crops would be safe. I had a few things I wanted to accomplish. I started at the beach where I fished up the red snapper and utilized a fish spawning spot. I sold my haul to Willie while holding onto the snapper. I brought Gus a daffodil for his birthday and headed to the community center. I donated the red snapper, completing the ocean fish bundle. I donated my hot pepper to the summer crop bundle. I picked up some lumber and stone from my house and headed to Robin's, where I asked the carpenter to expand my coop. Yes, it took just about all my money, but I had a bunch of spring forage I didn't need, so I tossed it into the shipping bin. I went to the secret woods for stump busting and a little fishing. I utilized a spawning spot, and holy freaking frack, who would have thought that something creepy, hulking, and antisocial was dwelling around Pelican Town? Besides Clint, of course. That was enough fishing for one night, but I did reach fishing level 8. Emily was waiting on my porch on day 9. She somehow knew I had obtained cloth and said I could use her sewing machine. That was nice. I had poppies, sunflowers, and a large brown chicken egg ready for the community center. I would hold off on donating them. I crafted a pair of lightning rods before heading to the mines. It was a good luck day, and I needed iron. I took a break that afternoon to sell the 3 lead rods I had acquired to the Adventurers Guild and utilized a fish spawning spot. Then it was back to the depths, where I found an infested floor and picked up a magnet ring. I left with 111 pieces of iron ore. I had a letter from Robin on day 10. My coop was upgraded and she had installed an incubator. I didn't have much to do around the farm, so I headed to Marnie's, where I purchased a duck. I named the little duckling Anna. I stump busted in the secret woods and headed to the mountains. It was Mara's birthday, and I brought her a gold bar. I was on a mission for copper, and it was a bad luck day, so I didn't find much. I felt a little lucky when a Dougie dropped a yam I could donate to the community center as part of the fall crop bundle. I left that night with 50 pieces of copper ore. The skies cleared on day 11, perfect for the luau down at the beach. Before the festivities, I crafted tappers and set them up. I had acquired some lightning rods from the previous day's storm, and it was supposed to storm more tomorrow. This was the rainiest year ever. I checked some trash bins on my way to the beach and found some spicy eel I'd saved for a dive in the Skull Cavern someday. At the luau, I chatted with my neighbors and added a Gold Star cauliflower to the hot tub, soup pot. The governor loved the soup, and everyone returned home in a good mood. It was yet another dark and rainy morning on day 12. Gus sent me the recipe for the salmon dinner. I had tomatoes and hops ready to harvest, and I had a large white chicken egg I could donate to the community center. Another day. I headed to the mines. The wizard had posted a ghost slaying request, and I slayed the specters in just a few hours. I turned in the request and stump busted in the secret woods. I spent the rest of the evening fishing, and the Stardew Sasquatch returned. My melons were ready on day 13, including the 5 gold star ones I would need for the quality crop bundle. I chopped a few trees and headed to the community center. I had a lot to donate, including the quality melons, a melon and tomato for the summer crops, the yam for the fall crops, 2 eggs for the animal bundle, maple syrup and a poppy for the chef bundle, hay for the fodder bundle, and a sunflower for the dye bundle. I brought Alex a summer squash for his birthday and headed to Pierre's. I gave Abigail an amethyst because, why not? I purchased hot pepper seeds to take the place of the melons and planted them at my farm. I brought a topaz to Gus, finishing a fetch quest, and at Clint's I had the blacksmith open geodes so I could donate goodies to the museum. There was a bunch of forage at the beach for me to collect before delving into the mines. It was a good luck day, but not a great mine time. I did find 2 burglar shanks I later sold to the Adventurers Guild. I reached farming level 8, foraging level 8, and combat level 7. A sea of blueberries were ready to harvest on day 14. This was going to be a monumental payday. I crafted a keg and added a salmonberry as I'd need some wine for the Enchanter's bundle, and I wasn't about to waste any of my good produce on something for the community center. Come on. I was super excited when a train was passing through the valley on my way to Robbins. Unfortunately, it was a Joja train and didn't drop anything. Mildly annoyed, I headed to Robbins to order a barn. Then I was off to the mines to work on another ghost slaying request for the wizard. It took all night, but I finally slayed the final one. Before returning home, I made some community center donations, like the crystal fruit and winter root to the winter forage bundle and a blueberry to complete the summer crop bundle. My first corn was ready on day 15. I would need a regular quality and 5 gold quality for the community center. My little duckling Anna was all grown up and had laid a duck egg I would donate another day. I crafted more quality sprinklers and expanded my crop area. I turned in the ghost slaying request to the wizard, and he gave me a prize token. I stopped by Pierre's for more hot pepper seeds. I exchanged the prize token for a star drop tea and noticed an upcoming reward, the pomegranate tree. That was the reminder I needed to return to Pierre's for an apple sapling. I returned home and planted my crops and sapling. I headed to the mountains to work on a carp fishing request for Demetrius when I caught Abigail running around as if bees were chasing her. I gave her a moment to regain her composure, and I gave her the star drop tea. It was funny she mentioned an amethyst because I also brought her one of those. I fished the rest of the afternoon, catching the carp, and turned in the request to Demetrius. I worked around the farm the rest of the evening. I expanded my stone fence and chopped trees. There was a pomegranate in my fruit cave on day 16. That would be donated to the community center, along with my red cabbage. My dad was thinking of me and sent me some stone. That was really thoughtful. I was off to the community center. I donated the pomegranate and finished the artisan goods bundle. I donated the duck egg to the animal bundle, the corn to fall crops, and the red cabbage to the dye bundle. I swung by Marnie's to nab Lewis's lucky purple shorts. I busted stumps in the secret woods and returned to my farm for a bunch of tree chopping. The green rain had to be coming soon, and I wanted my farm to be as clear as possible for the big event. That evening, I delivered a red mushroom to Sebastian and utilized a fish spawning spot at the mountain lake. I sold the broken trident and Neptune's glaive weapons to the Adventurers Guild and putzed around in the mines a bit before returning home. My sturgeon fish pond had produced their first roe on day 17. I'd wait for my preserve jar to be free before processing it into caviar. I didn't have much planned, but all this money was burning a hole in my pocket, so I headed to Robin's for the big barn upgrade. I brought Sam a grape for his birthday and took geodes and mystery boxes to Clint's for processing. I donated some goodies to the museum and headed to the mines. It was a good luck day, and although I didn't need any gold ore, I wanted to focus my mining and monster slaying efforts on the lower levels. That afternoon, I found the vacation shirt. I've never encountered this one before. As it is summertime, I figured I should wear it. That evening, I found an immunity band that adds +4 immunity. I left the mines with pockets full of gems I would sell for some quick cash. I checked the weather forecast before bed, and the weather announcer detected an anomalous reading. It's probably nothing. I reached level 9 mining. Green rain had descended upon the valley on day 18. But that wasn't going to stop me from harvesting the blueberries and hot peppers. This was going to be another awesome payday. I cleared weeds, chopped down fiddlehead fern trees, and obtained a hidden prize token in town. I spent much of the day chopping trees and collecting moss from weeds. It was kind of boring, but I thought of all the awesome things I could build with the wood I collected. I reached level 9 farming and level 9 foraging. I was glad the green rain was over on day 19. I crafted some seed makers and processed my ancient fruit into seeds that I planted with some deluxe speed grow. I took some time to clean up my storage chests before heading to the mountains. It was Demetrius's birthday and I brought him a strawberry. I stopped by the community center and donated my 5 Gold Star corn, completing the quality crop bundle. Abigail and I played some Journey of the Prairie King together, as I am quite the gamer. I am quite experienced with a joystick after all. Whatever that means. Playtime was over and I purchased the final backpack upgrade. I exchanged a prize token for the blue pinstripe bed. Then it was mine time. It was a good luck day, but I was swarmed by bats before finding just a few gems. The real prize was discovered later that evening when I found the final dwarf scroll. Once I donated it to the museum, I'd obtained the Dwarfish Translation Guide and could buy explosives. I also picked up another red shirt. I didn't want to spend money on a dresser right now, so I was storing my extra clothes in my mine chest. I had a letter from Demetrius on day 20. The scientist requested one of my melons. I had hot peppers and tomatoes ready to harvest. I delivered the melon, and while I was there, I ordered the final barn upgrade from Robin. Abigail had posted a request for a carp to pull a prank on Pierre, and I'm here for it. I delivered the required fish and received a prize token. I headed to the beach for some foraging when I spied a cockle. I scooped it up and delivered it to the community center, completing the crab pot bundle, all without using a crab pot. I donated the final dwarf scroll to the museum and received the Dwarfish Translation Guide. I exchanged the prize token for some preserve jars. I headed to the trout derby taking place in the Cindersap Forest. I fished for a few hours and turned in my tokens for some prizes. Then I headed to the beach for some night fishing. It paid off as I reached fishing level 9. I had more hot peppers ready on day 21. I also had some oak resin ready, so I crafted more kegs and more tappers. I would need to go mining for copper in the future. I headed to the beach, and after snacking on some trout soup and equipped with a trap bobber, I caught the legendary crimson fish on my first try. In town, I utilized a fish spawning spot and donated a bone to the museum. In the Cindersap Forest, I turned in some trout tags for some prizes. Back at the farm, I emptied my sturgeon fish pond and added the crimson fish for roe that would sell for more than caviar. I spent the rest of the evening cutting down trees around the farm. My orange tree produced its first fruit on day 22. I had more blueberries to harvest, and I could not be more excited. I headed to the mines and purchased the rare crow scarecrow from the dwarf. I spent all day in the highest levels of the mines collecting copper ore. Nothing particularly exciting happened while I was there. It was a good luck day, so ore and stone were in abundance. I left with 97 pieces of copper ore and a few gems. An explosion was heard in the night. That can't be good. I found the cause of the explosion on day 23. A meteor had landed on my farm. Fortunately, it didn't cause any major damage. My first crimson fish roe was ready, and I harvested some hot peppers. I was back into the mines. The wizard had requested the slaying of a squid kid. It took a little while, but that afternoon, I found one. I spent the rest of the afternoon into the evening mining away for gold ore and stone. I had some time after I returned home to chop down a few trees before bed. I was very, very busy on day 24. It all started with a hot pepper harvest. I turned in the squid kid slaying request to the wizard, and I purchased a pig from Marnie. I named it Expensive. I also purchased a heater. At Robbins, I requested the construction of a second silo. I dropped off salmonberry wine at the community center for the Enchanter's Bundle. I brought Pam a pale ale she had requested. I had Clint open some mystery boxes and geodes and requested a pickaxe upgrade. I donated goodies to the museum and brought Abigail an amethyst. I headed to the beach, where I gave Willie a gold bar for his birthday. Demetrius requested a pair of tuna be fished up, so I got to work. I hadn't had any luck, so I sold my haul and fished some more. I fished up the pair and turned in the request. I spent the rest of the evening chopping trees on my farm. I had a letter from George on day 25. He wanted a hot pepper for his sore knee. Once I finished my farm chores, I headed to the mountains and delivered a fire quartz to Linus, completing a fetch quest. I had a second monster compendium and thought Abigail might enjoy it as much as I did. And I was correct. I expected to see her father in there, but surprisingly, Pierre didn't make an appearance. I delivered George's hot pepper and exchanged a prize token for a pomegranate sapling. I decided not to plant it now. I'd wait for my greenhouse. I was checking trash cans, as one does, and acquired the garbage hat. It has a 0.2% chance to be found after opening at least 20 garbage cans. What can I say? I love trash. I stump busted in the secret woods and utilized a fish spawning spot there for several hours. I returned to my farm and, you guessed it, chopped down trees. I was sad to see the last harvest of my hot peppers and blueberries on day 26. But they had helped me make a ton of money this season, and I was about to spend even more. I headed to Marnie's and purchased a cow and a goat. I named the cow Beatrice, and I wasn't sure what to name the goat. And then I thought, how about Mitzi? My next stop was Robbins, where I ordered the final coop upgrade. I picked up my gold pickaxe from Clint and headed to the mines to try it out. I was always going to need more iron ore, so I focused on the frosty floors. I left with a fair amount. I sold some old gear to the Adventurers Guild before heading home. I reached farming level 10 and chose the artisan profession. Artisan goods are worth 40% more. I had a bunch of lightning rods to gather on day 27. I had some hot peppers and corn to harvest, and Marnie sent me a letter informing me of the auto grabber she had in stock. This was the whole reason I held off on buying a cow and goat until now. I didn't want to spend 1,000 gold on a milk pail, which consumes 4 points of energy every time it's used. Now, it does give you 5 points of farming experience, but I obtained that easily with my crops and coop critters. I gathered up all my artisan goods and sold them now that they're worth 40% more. I crafted more quality sprinklers and replaced the crummy basic ones. I put down mixed summer seeds and mixed seeds as placeholders and headed to Marnie's. I purchased the auto grabber and set it up in my barn. The rest of the day was spent setting up pathing and cutting trees. I bid farewell to my summer crops on day 28. It seemed like only yesterday I was planting blueberries, and tomorrow it would be cranberries. I reflected on the constant changing of the seasons as I crafted some cheese presses. Soon my little cow and goat would be producing milk, and I wanted to be ready to rake in the profits. I didn't have anything else pressing to do, so I headed to the mines for coal and iron ore. I found an abundance of ore and monsters. That evening, I headed to the beach for the Dance of the Moonlight Jellies. I purchased a pretty banner as a reminder of my first summer in the valley. I chatted with my neighbors and greeted the mysterious jellies as summer faded away with their glow.
Hello, this is Coconut, and Coconut would like to remind you to stay hydrated. It's about halfway through the video, and you're probably getting a little thirsty, so don't forget to drink some water.
My once vibrant crop field was reduced to shriveled weeds on day 1. I got to work clearing debris before checking on my animals. My duck Anna had produced her first feather. I changed up my farm layout a bit before heading into town for seeds. On the way, I gathered some hazelnuts. I would need one for the community center. I purchased cranberries, eggplants, a little amaranth, and pumpkin seeds. Once everything was planted, I added a mixed flower seed patch so I could cultivate fairy honey next to my greenhouse. That evening, I visited the community center, where I donated the hazelnut and completed the fall forage bundle. I donated the duck feather and completed the dye bundle. I didn't have much to do around the farm on day 2, and when I headed into town, Mayor Lewis and Robin were setting up the special orders board. Before I had a chance to check it out, I gave Penny an emerald for her birthday. Upon investigation, I decided to undertake the wizard's request, a curious substance. I needed to slay ghosts to obtain some ectoplasm. I brought geodes for Clint to smash, and donated new goodies to the museum. I delivered an algae to Maru, and brought Abigail an amethyst. I spent most of the afternoon fishing in town for the tiger trout, but after 3 hours and not encountering one, I moved on. At my farm, I planted some pumpkin seeds Clint revealed from a mystery box. I spent the rest of my evening in the mines ghost hunting, but only found one who did not have an ectoplasm. I did find a bunch of ore. I sold some things to the Adventurers Guild and utilized a fish spawning spot before heading home. Marnie sent me a letter on day 3 requesting some amaranth. Beatrice and Mitzi had matured and produced their first little milks. I placed one of Anna's duck eggs into the incubator. I stopped at Marnie's, where I adopted a rabbit I named Dottie. In town, I fished up the tiger trout right away. I donated it to the community center and completed the river fish bundle. I changed into my snazzy red tuxedo and headed into the mines for more ghost busting. I didn't find any ectoplasm, but I left with pockets full of iron ore. On day 4, I felt all of Marmalade's love for me. I had a busy day planned. The wizard had requested the slaying of 3 ghosts. I still wanted to obtain the ectoplasm, so it was the perfect slaying request. I wasn't going to spend all day in the mines. I had the opportunity to catch the walleye as it was a rainy day. I lucked out and slayed the spirits quickly. The 3rd one dropped the ectoplasm, and I was ready to fish. But first, Abigail was playing her flute out in the rain. We took shelter under a tree together and made sweet, sweet music with my mini harp and her flute. After that pleasant distraction, I caught the walleye and donated it to the community center, completing the night fish bundle. I dropped some things off at home and headed to the wizard's tower, where I turned in the ghost slaying and ectoplasm requests. I stump busted in the secret woods and returned home, soaked to the bone. The wizard sent me the crafting recipe for the mini obelisk on day 5. I harvested some wheat and planted mixed seeds in their place. I took some geodes to Clint and donated the new minerals to the museum. I utilized a fish spawning spot in town and exchanged a prize token for Friendship 101. Upon reading it, I would become friends with people faster. Ah, yes, the famous power of friendship. I've heard of that. I brought Elliot a wild plum for his birthday. At home, I crafted some kegs and set them up. Someday I'd get a shed for all this stuff. I purchased a rare crow scarecrow from the traveling cart lady and busted stumps in the secret woods. That evening, I chopped trees around my farm. I awoke to a cold and rainy morning on day 6. My eggplants were ready to harvest, and I put one aside for the community center. I checked on my animals, and I really should explain I have a mod that makes pigs appear as foxes, as I don't find the pigs particularly cute. I headed to the mines. Clint had posted a request for 15 iron ore. It was a lucky day, and I found them quickly. I turned in the request and received a prize token. The blacksmith opened some geodes for me, but no new treasures were revealed. I exchanged the prize token for some explosives and headed to the beach. Willie had posted a request for someone to fish up 3 red snapper. It just so happened that the first 3 fish I caught that day happened to be red snapper, so I turned in the request pretty quickly. I fished in the ocean the rest of the afternoon into the evening. I did not sell my haul when I returned home because I reached level 10 fishing and chose the angler profession. Fish are worth 50% more. I woke up in a great mood on day 7. I was checking in on my coop critters and barnyard buddies when I saw my truffle fox, Expensive, dig up their first truffle. Once my farm chores were finished, I headed to Willie's to sell off the fish I had caught the previous day, and headed to the community center. I donated the eggplant to the fall crop bundle. The truffle finished off the chef bundle, and I unlocked all the money bundles except for the 10,000 gold bundle I would unlock the following day. I brought Abigail some chocolate cake to celebrate my progress and chopped trees on my farm the rest of the day. A blanket of ruby cranberries greeted me the morning of day 8. I also had amaranth ready to harvest, and I planted broccoli and mixed seeds in its place. I delivered the amaranth to Marnie, and it was also the start of blackberry season, so I ran around gathering as many as I could. I dropped off a frozen tear to Gus, completing a fetch quest. Then I donated 10,000 gold to the community center, completing the vault room. Linus had lost his berry-picking basket, and once I found it, I delivered it. I spent the rest of the evening in the lower levels of the mines. I hadn't found a prismatic shard, and I was still using the hokey-pokey insect head weapon. I did not find the rainbow gem I so desperately longed for, but I did find my first purple mushroom. I would donate it to the field research bundle at the community center another day. The bus to the Calico Desert was repaired overnight, which begs the question, what does a forest spirit know about fixing a bus? Marnie was waiting on my porch on day 9, requesting a cave carrot for her goats. I'd drop it off at some point, but I had a lot of other things to do. A new duckling was waiting in my coop, and I named her Jessica. My rabbit produced her first wool. I would donate that to the community center another day. I started the quest to get to the casino by putting a battery pack in the lockbox, then waited for a train to pass so I could put a rainbow shell on the train platform box. Clint broke some geodes for me, and I dropped off goodies at the museum. I picked up the community cleanup request from the special order board. I just need to fish up some trash. No problem. I packed a bunch of stuff from my first trip to the desert. I took the bus and purchased beet seeds from Sandy as part of the casino quest. I fished up a sandfish, the last fish I need for the community center. Then I exchanged some rubies for spicy eel and headed into the depth of the Skull Cavern. Well, it was a little sketchy, but I managed all right. I obtained just a little iridium and made it down 20 floors before I had to return home. Now, big disclaimer, I am using mods, and I will definitely be utilizing the elevator mod. I planted my beet seeds before drifting off to Slumberland. I reached level 10 mining and chose the prospector profession. My chance to find coal is doubled. Gunther was waiting on my porch on day 10. He thanked me for all of the museum donations and gave me an old rusty key. I had a letter challenging me to reach level 25 of the Skull Cavern. No problem. I had an apple in my farm cave, 2 more, and I could donate all 3 to the fodder bundle. I harvested some broccoli and jumped on the bus. It was a great luck day, and I had some spicy eel to increase that luck even further. I found gems and some iridium, but I did not find a prismatic shard. I made it about 25 floors. Just before leaving, I found a purple slime egg I'd sell for some quick cash. On day 11, Mr. Key sent me another letter, this time with 10,000 gold included for reaching floor 25 of the Skull Cavern. I checked in on my animals, and when I looked in my auto grabber, I was happy to see a large goat milk. I set it aside for the community center. I harvested my eggplants and headed into town. I brought Jody a diamond for her birthday and took geodes to Clint. There were some new goodies, so I dropped them off at the museum and claimed a rare crow scarecrow. I headed to Robbins and ordered a tractor courtesy of the Tractor Mod. I picked up the big chest recipe and headed to the desert. It was another lucky day, and I made it all the way to floor 100, but there wasn't a prismatic shard to be found. I will be at the mines every good luck day until I obtain one or pass out trying. When I checked on my animals on day 12, I found that I had a large cow's milk in the auto grabber. Once my pumpkins are ready, I'll be dropping off all these goodies to the community center. My ancient fruit were ready. I held on to the gold quality one and processed the rest into the seed maker. In town, I used the rusty key to unlock the sewer grate. I met Krobus, the merchant of rare and exotic goods. So immediately I bought an iridium sprinkler, a void egg, and the star drop. I had Clint smash some geodes, I donated new stuff to the museum, and I ordered a hoe upgrade. I brought Abigail an amethyst and returned home where I incubated the void egg in my coop. I hadn't forgotten Linus's special order, I swear. I was just waiting for the right time, and this was it. I fished up all the trash from my farm pond and dropped it off at the recycling bin. I chopped down a few trees and went to bed. Linus sent me the crafting recipe for fiber seeds on day 13. I had my first batch of fairy rose honey ready, my tractor was complete, and I just had to try it out on my cranberry empire. It was a special day for other reasons too. It was Miss Abigail's birthday. I brought her an amethyst and she was delighted. I also purchased a bouquet from Pierre to let her know I was thinking about getting more serious. She really liked that. I celebrated by doing donuts around the general store. Oh no, I just had a disgusting thought. When I marry her, which of course I will, that means Pierre will be my father-in-law. Ugh, I think I'm going to be sick. Aside from that, I had a really good feeling about the Skull Cavern. It wasn't a super lucky day, but I just had to get in there. I found tons of iridium nodes, but it wasn't until later that night I finally found a prismatic shard. I left the mines, I raised it to the sky, and was awarded the Galaxy Sword. I had found a purpley bandana shirt in the Skull Cavern, and I changed into it. After all, I think it was Abigail who had made my luck turn around, and purple is her color. When I returned home, I sold some old gear to the Adventurers Guild. I had a mysterious note from Abigail on day 14. She wanted to show me something in her room after dark. Ooh, I wonder what that could be. My pumpkins are ready to harvest, so that meant that it was community center drop-off day. I finished the animal bundle and the fall crop bundle, so the pantry was finished. I added the sandfish to the specialty fish bundle and completed the aquarium. I added the purple mushroom to the research bundle, and I'm almost done with the community center. I purchased pumpkin seeds from Pierre and picked up my hoe from Clint. He crushed geodes, and I donated a new mineral to the museum. I planted my pumpkin seeds and took my hoe back to Clint for another upgrade. I spent the rest of the evening in the mines trying out the Galaxy Sword. Oh, I forgot what a big difference this sword makes. I don't know how I survived with just the insect head for so long. My greenhouse was repaired overnight, and I completely forgot about the greenhouse. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had my hoe upgraded. Whoops! On day 15, Jody was on my porch and invited me to have dinner with her family. I just had to bring along a largemouth bass. In town, I picked up the special order Fragments of the Past, essentially bone collecting for Gunther. I'd have to hit the mines and get busy slaying skeletons. I traded in a prize token for a sports cap, and that reminded me of some business I had in the mountains. The glittering boulder had disappeared, and Willie gave me a copper pan so I could scoop minerals out of the water. At Robbins, I purchased an oak dresser and a house upgrade. I had quite the hat and clothing collection, so back at my farmhouse, I took the time to set up my new dresser. It was Sandy's birthday, so I brought her a sweet pea flower. Then I hit the Skull Caverns. It was a good luck day, and I found some crystal shoes and some prismatic shards. I returned to the valley and focused on skeleton slaying the rest of the evening. I left with 6 bone fragments. My apple tree produced its first fruit on day 16, and my beets were ready to harvest. I wouldn't be able to drop them off at Mayor Lewis's fridge today, as it was the Stardew Valley Fair. Apparently, my future father-in-law is very serious about his Grange display. It sure would be a shame if someone else won today. Like me. And that's exactly what happened. With my variety of rainbow-colored, top-notch goodies, I snagged first place and the 1,000 star tokens that came with it. I needed about 1.5 times that to obtain the Star Drop and Rarecrow Scarecrow, so I got to work with the slingshots and fishing. I earned both and returned home. I donated my 3 apples to the community center on day 17, completing the fodder bundle. I just needed a few more things: the rabbit's foot, the nautilus shell, the crocus, and the snow yam. I picked up my upgraded hoe from Clint, and he opened a bunch of geodes for me. I donated new goodies to the museum and headed to the beach. I fished up a sardine and brought it to Clint to complete a fetch quest. He gave me a prize token. I exchanged for a dehydrator. I'm probably not going to use this. I put the beets in Mayor Lewis's fridge, and while I could have finished the casino quest today, I had other plans. I returned to my farm where I crafted sprinklers and set up my greenhouse. I used deluxe fertilizer and planted my ancient fruit seeds. I also planted a whole bunch of winter forage seeds, which aren't typically available until winter. Except I had saved all of the winter roots I found in the frosty floors of the mines and processed them in the seed maker. In the past, I've had awful luck obtaining a crocus, so I wanted to get a head start on cultivating the winter forage. I headed to the mines to work on Gunther's special order and slayed skeletons up until the very last moment before returning home with 33 pieces of bone. I reached combat level 9. My void egg had finished incubating and produced a very odd-looking chick on day 18. I named her Gemma. I had saved a few strawberries from spring, processed them in the seed maker, and planted them in the greenhouse. I brought Marnie the cave carrot, and brought Abigail an amethyst, maxing out our relationship. I brought Marnie a sweet pea for her birthday. I headed to Robbins and ordered a house upgrade. Then it was mine time to work on Gunther's special order. It was a bad luck day, which meant more skeletons to slay. I quickly made it through floors 70 through 80, and when I returned to the surface, I was surprised to see Abigail there. It seems that she had been scared by some bats. I asked if she was okay, and reassured her that even a tough, burly farmer like me can get scared down there sometimes. She told me how she felt about me, and we made out, because nothing says romance like a dark cave full of monsters. I continued working in the mines the rest of the evening, and before returning home, I sold a bunch of old gear to the Adventurers Guild. I obtained 41 bone fragments. Granny Evelyn was on my porch on day 19. She brought me a garden pot and blueprints to make more. Caroline, or Mom as I'll be calling her, requested a pumpkin for Abigail. I'm sure I had one to spare. My sweet gemberry was ready to harvest, as were my ancient fruit. After processing the ancient fruit in the seed maker, I planted them in my greenhouse with some speed grow. With my farm chores completed, I headed to Marnie's, where I bought an auto grabber for my coop. I stopped by the secret woods to present the sweet gemberry to Master Cannoli and received a star drop for my efforts. I purchased an iridium sprinkler from Krobus and brought Mom a pumpkin. Clint crushed some geodes for me, but they were all duplicates. I delivered a cave carrot to Demetrius and headed to the mines. That evening, I had obtained all the bone fragments required to complete Gunther's special order. The museum was closed, so I would have to deliver them the following day. I reached level 10 foraging and chose the lumberjack profession. All trees have a chance to drop hardwood. I didn't have much to do on day 20. Clint opened some geodes for me, and I turned in the bone fragments, completing the fragments of the past special order. I traded in a prize token for mystery boxes. When Clint opened them, most of them contained more mystery boxes. This didn't make me very happy. It was just a waste of money for some ordinary items. I spent the rest of the day cleaning up my farm. That evening, I crafted 10 kegs and filled them with the last of my blueberries. Gunther sent me the blueprints for the bone mill on day 21, and Mayor Lewis sent me 500 gold from the Stardew Valley Agricultural Fund. My void chicken Gemma had matured seemingly overnight and had produced her first void egg. I delivered a peach to Robin for her birthday. I spent some time at the beach where I utilized a fish spawning spot. I delivered a green algae to Willie and sold off my haul. I spent the rest of the day in the lower levels of the mines. It was not a good luck day, but I wanted to max out my combat skill, and to do that, I'd need to battle the toughest beasties in town, or the mines. I sold some old gear to the Adventurers Guild before heading home. I picked up a new special order on day 22, Cave Patrol. Clint wanted someone to slay 50 skeletons. I wanted to max out my combat skill, so I accepted. I was off to the mines to slay red slimes for Mayor Lewis. It was a bad luck day, so I found and finished them off quickly. I stopped at Robin's and requested a house upgrade. I turned in the slime slaying request to Mayor Lewis, and he gave me a prize token. I exchanged it for a houseplant. I took the bus to the desert and gave the sand dragon his final meal, and was instructed to check the lumber pile outside of my house. Doing so revealed the club card. On a good luck day, I'll be sure to check out the casino. I was back to the mines and slayed skeletons the rest of the evening. There were quite a few, and I had slayed 35 of the required 50 before calling it a night. I had a field of cranberries to harvest on day 23. Once I finished up around the farm, I was off to the mines. In a short time, I finished Clint's special order and received 6,000 gold. I bought some salads from Gus and was off to the Skull Cavern. I focused on slaying monsters and was really hoping I'd find a prehistoric floor so I could incubate a dinosaur egg. No such luck, but a serpent dropped the rabbit's foot I needed for the community center. Now there's only a 0.8% chance of that actually happening, so I was thrilled. I left the mine later that evening and headed into town to donate the rabbit's foot when I found Abigail in the graveyard. She had been practicing her swordsmanship. She wanted to explore the caves, and I told her how exciting it is. She had spent her whole life in this small town and wanted an adventure, and I couldn't blame her. Uh-oh, look who showed up. This guy. Aside from his shady business practices, this is yet another reason I loathe the shopkeeper. Pierre told his daughter to return home to help her mother with dinner. Abigail called him out on his backwards thinking, and we took off, leaving him in our dust. We hung out in a bush together, and I hummed "I Think We're Alone Now" until dorky Pierre went back to his store. After the family drama subsided, I donated the rabbit's foot to the community center, completing the Enchanter's bundle. Clint sent me the blueprints for the geode crusher on day 24. I checked my greenhouse and discovered my winter forage was ready to harvest. That meant I would only need the nautilus shell to finish the community center. Robin had requested 30 pieces of lumber, and fortunately she was upgrading my house, so I delivered it quickly. I donated the snow yam and crocus to the community center, finishing the winter forage bundle and completing the craft room. I played tag with the Junimo before visiting George. It was his birthday, and I brought him a leek. Sometimes Demetrius will send a nautilus shell in the mail, so I thought I'd butter him up by giving him some fall forage. It doesn't really make a difference if you give him something or not, but I told myself it might help. I utilized a fish spawning spot at the mountain lake that afternoon. I exchanged a prize token for Woodcutter's Weekly. Reading it would help me gain some foraging experience, but I was currently maxed out, so I put it aside to read a little later. I didn't feel the need to stay up, so I went to bed early. The bridge to the quarry was repaired overnight. On day 25, Robin sent me 50 pieces of lumber in the mail. My cellar was ready, and I added some wine and cheese to age in the casks. I spent the morning and early afternoon fishing up salmon for a request Demetrius had posted. Once the fish were caught, I headed to the beach, where I purchased the mermaid pendant from the old mariner. I turned in Demetrius's request and headed back into town. I proposed to Abigail with a mermaid pendant. She accepted, and we'd be married in 3 days. I had almost forgotten about the quarry, so I headed back to the mountains to check it out. I smashed up all the stone and found a bit of coal, ore, and gems. I traveled back to town and snuck into Pierre's general store. Abigail was waiting for me. She wanted us to play with the spirit board. It was spelling I Heart GH. Well, she knocked the board over, and that was the end of that. And then she kicked me out. I was annoyed, so I went home and went to bed. Abigail greeted me on my farmhouse porch on day 26. She apologized for her bizarre behavior the previous evening, and I accepted. I harvested my ancient fruit, saving the Gold Star quality and turning the regular ones into seeds. I had strawberries ready in the greenhouse, and I planted the ancient fruit seeds with some Speed Grow. I checked the traveling cart lady and bought a skull poster I thought Abigail might like. Then I was off to the desert. I entered the back room of the Oasis and bought 1,000 casino coins. I ate a lucky lunch from a mystery box and hit the slots. I only needed 10,000 coins for the Rare Crow Scarecrow, and I made that quickly. I obtained the alien Scarecrow and headed into the Skull Cavern for some monster slaying. I spent all day and night in there and reached the monster eradication goal for bat slaying, but I didn't find one stinking dinosaur. That night, a witch flew over my chicken coop. The last of my pumpkins were ready to harvest on day 27. When I checked my coop that morning, it seems the witch had left me an extra void egg. The Spirits Eve festival wasn't until later that evening, and it was a pretty good luck day, so I headed to the Skull Cavern to dinosaur hunt. Well, I didn't find any, but I slayed a bunch of monsters while I was there. I returned home just in time for the festivities. I purchased a Rare Crow Scarecrow and a funky purple rug. I chatted with my neighbors and ventured into the spooky maze to find the golden pumpkin. Poor Abigail never made it past the spiders. Abigail and I were married on day 28. Mayor Lewis performed the ceremony, and the whole town showed up. I was excited to have Caroline as a mother-in-law. There were enough rumors surrounding this family that maybe it was the wizard I should be calling Dad. I had collected all the Rare Crow Scarecrows and received the crafting recipe for the deluxe Scarecrow. After the excitement of the wedding died down, I had my last cranberries to harvest. Winter's chill was on the breeze, and I felt a little sad saying goodbye to my fall crops. I finished up my farm chores and headed to Robin's, where I ordered the construction of a shed for my collection of kegs. I also delivered a hazelnut the carpenter had requested. I returned to the Skull Caverns. If I could just obtain one dinosaur egg, I'd be satisfied. So that was my plan. I did not find one, but thanks to the elevator mod, I reached floor 300, where I obtained 5 artifact troves, 2 rain totems, and an auto-petter I would set up in my coop. I was pleasantly surprised with all the gifts, but still hadn't found any dinosaurs. I continued slaying monsters until pretty late into the night. I set up the auto-petter in my coop before turning in. I reached level 10 combat and chose the brute profession. My attacks will deal 15% more damage. On the first day of winter, I headed into town when I noticed a suspicious figure by the bus stop. I followed their footprints into town, and they gave me a magnifying glass which will allow me to read secret notes. I picked up a special order, Rock Rejuvenation. I just needed to deliver some gemstones to Emily. I checked the beach, and there wasn't a nautilus shell to be found. Clint crushed some geodes for me, and I donated some new artifacts to the museum. I brought Krobus a horseradish for his birthday and spent the rest of the day and night redoing my farm. I crafted many iridium sprinklers and lightning rods. On the snowy morning of day 2, I took a ride to Grandpa's secret room in the Center Sap Forest. Why isn't his secret room on the farm? Anyway, I had maxed out all my skills, but it would be a little while before I could choose a mastery. I brought Emily the gemstone she requested, completing Rock Rejuvenation. I traded in a prize token for a Star Drop tea. I checked the beach, and surprise, surprise, I did not find a nautilus shell. I stopped at home to give Abigail the Star Drop tea and headed to the desert. It was a bad luck day, and I thought maybe there would be more monsters, more prehistoric floors. Well, there wasn't. I found a dinosaur, and he dropped a bone. That was not the dino egg I was hoping for. I spent all day and night in the mines, and that was the one and only dinky dino I encountered. What a bust. Emily sent me a sewing machine on day 3. I had strawberries ready in my greenhouse, and my shed was completed. I started moving my empty kegs into the shed so they could all be on a schedule once they were finished processing. I headed to the beach, and would you look at that? There was a nautilus shell. I scooped it up and traveled straight to the community center. I added it to the field researchers bundle, finishing the bulletin board, and completing the community center, all on winter day 3. The community center was restored to its former glory, and I said goodbye to the Juminos as they returned home. Now, if you thought I took the rest of the day off to relax, you would be wrong. I was back to the Skull Cavern. I found a prehistoric floor loaded with dinosaurs. And guess what? None of them dropped an egg. Hey, at least I got my nautilus shell. I returned home and brought Linus a prismatic shard for his birthday. Then I traveled to Grandpa's secret room and unlocked the farming mastery. I processed winter roots in my seed maker and planted mixed winter seeds before heading to bed. On the morning of day 7, Mayor Lewis sent me a note thanking me for completing the bulletin board requests in the community center. I walked into town and everyone was celebrating the renovations to the community center. Mayor Lewis thanked me and gave me the Stardew Hero Award. Stardew Hero. Morris came to look for his customers, and Pierre settled things the old-fashioned way. Pierre talked crap about JoJo's employees, seemingly forgetting that both Sam and Shane are employed there. What a creep. Looks like Team JoJo's blasting off again. And that's how Shane and Sam lost their jobs. I was leaving the celebration when I saw a train was passing through the valley. Now, I never had this happen before, so I wanted to share it with you. After JoJo or the community center is completed, the Wizard's Missing Ink quest will trigger when you go up to the train stop. Because there was a train, the cutscene still played with the train whistle sound effect in the background and steam visible from the locomotive, but the train itself was invisible. I just thought that was interesting. Long story short, I had to find the Wizard's Missing Ink. First, I took Geodes to Clint's and donated goodies to the museum. Then I chatted with Mom a bit. Ugh, I love her. Then I went to see Pierre and found his secret stash. Now, it's widely debated amongst the fandom if this is adult material or substance related, but regardless, Caroline has a right to know. So I told him I was going to tell. He didn't like that very much and called me terrible. I wanted to see what else he had to say, and Greedy Guts got over his bitterness pretty quickly. Then he called me daughter like it pained him to say that. Seriously, screw this guy. Boo-hoo, too much pressure for him to overcharge. Pierre, why are you still talking? More importantly, why am I still talking to you? I headed to the sewer where I obtained the Dark Talisman. I gave the goblin one of my void mayonnaise and fished up the void salmon. I got the magic ink and returned it to the wizard. There was just one last thing. The missing bundle. I had been saving things for this throughout my playthrough, like caviar from my old sturgeon fish pond, Gold Star ancient fruits, a prismatic shard, and the void salmon I just caught. I had wine aging in the basement, but that would take a while, so I was banking on one more gold quality ancient fruit and the stupid dinosaur egg that I could turn into mayonnaise. Hopefully, I could get one soon. To speed up the process of revealing the missing bundle, I used one of my rain totems. And that night, lightning struck the old JoJo Mart. The rain reminded Abigail of our lakeside duet on day 5. She gave me a starfruit as a symbol of our love. Aw, that's sweet. Stop the presses. Pierre sent out a notice that he's going to be open 7 days a week. I dropped off the items I had ready for the missing bundle at the old JoJo Mart. Today was the day. I was determined to find a dinosaur egg in the Skull Cavern. It wasn't until that afternoon that I tracked one down. I stopped everything and warped home. I processed it in the mayo maker and dropped it off that evening. It was now a race to see which would be ready first, my last Gold Star Ancient Fruit or my silver quality wine. The next week was a blur. I followed the same routine, checking my greenhouse for ancient fruit, checking my cellar casks every day. And finally, on day 11, my Silver Star quality wine was ready. I delivered it to the abandoned Joja Mart and completed the missing bundle. This poor little Junimo had been left behind, but now they can go home too. They disappeared in a flurry of stars, and I had a feeling something good would happen soon. I celebrated my success by ordering some house renovations from Robin. That night, something strange happened to the store. The next morning, Abigail spoiled the surprise that a movie theater had appeared in the place of the old Joja Mart. I was going to see a movie, and Abigail hated The Miracle at Cold Star Ranch, and that's what was currently playing. So I took someone who would like it. Good old Mom. I stopped by to invite her to join me and gave Pierre some sap, because I don't like him. She hoped it wasn't too violent, and that cracked me up. It's like the most innocent, family-friendly, feel-good holiday movie out there. I picked out some hummus for her to snack on, and we had a wonderful time. I was proud of all I had accomplished in less than a year. It was really satisfying knowing that I was out there having a great time while Pierre was stuck at the store. The movie had concluded for the night, and I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm going to leave it here, but if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you'll be notified when a new video comes out. Please leave your comments and suggestions down below. Please share the video and the playlist around if you can. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.